My name is Piotr Dudek. I am attorney at law and director of New Technologies, Defense and Aerospace Department in TGC Corporate Lawyers law firm. I am very pleased to welcome you to our webinar on National System of e-Invoices in Poland, so-called KseF. During the webinar, I encourage you to ask your questions via chat box. I will try to address at least some of them during the presentation, but due to the extensive contents of our webinar, most of the questions will be probably answered afterwards. We will also provide you with a recording from the webinar after the event. So now I will move to the main topic of our today's meeting. I would like to start by inviting you to take part in a short survey and answer one question. Has your organization already started preparing for KseF implementation? All right, thank you very much for your votes. So I see that majority of you are either thinking about implementing KseF within the next 6 months or at a later date, and a few persons have already started to prepare for implementation. Congratulations. Well, this is very important to start implementation as soon as possible, as you will see, the procedure and the process is quite complex and requires some time and great effort. So let's get started. During today's meeting, I will try to explain to you the subject of the national system of e-invoices and a structured invoice in the most coherent and compact way. I'll be talking about the legal basis for introduction of KseF in Poland, as well as subjective and objective scope of new regulations. Then I will spare some time to explain the implementation process regarding the KseF and structured invoices and discuss any potential difficulties you may encounter during the process. The last part of the webinar will be devoted to the process of preparations for implementation of the system in your organizations. KseF, Krajowy System e-Faktur, or in English, National System of e-Invoices and Structured Invoices. These are the terms that are really a hot topic in Poland recently. It is an issue of great interest and concern of thousands of businesses in our country. Well, it is understandable, as this is one of the most important challenges for Polish-based businesses in recent years, regardless whether we are talking about individual businesses or corporate entities. And implementation of KseF will result in a total change of a way of issuing and circulation of invoices. It is worth mentioning that KseF has been available as an optional or voluntary solution from January 2022, and it will be implemented as an obligatory tool for businesses in July 2024. These are the plans. But first things first, let's have a look at the legal basis, just briefly. KseF will be introduced to Polish law upon the Act of 11th March 2004, the VAT Act, as implemented, as amended by an Act of 2021, and it will be further amended by the planned bill, which has been introduced in November 2022. This bill will introduce KseF as an obligatory tool for all businesses in Poland. And of course, this regulation has some EU background. Particularly, the national legal provisions were possible to adopt thanks to the Council Implementing Decision 2022-1003, which authorized Poland to implement special measures to derogate from several articles of Directive 2006/112 and to implement mandatory electronic invoices nationwide. It is worth mentioning that Poland is not the first country in the European Union to implement such a solution. Well, the first was Portugal, then Italy. Then the next countries, the further countries, are considering this solution. Well, what is the time schedule for the KseF? Well, it all started in October 2021, where when KseF was made available for testing. It was the first, let's say, beta version of the system. In the following month, the VAT Act was amended, and thus relevant KseF-related provisions were introduced. And the system subsequently was made available as a voluntary option in January 2022. In November last year, the Ministry of Finance has presented a bill amending the VAT Act that is to result in introducing a mandatory use of the system. The bill defines July 2024 as a starting date for obligatory implementation of KseF by all businesses in Poland. It is worth noting that originally the date of January 2024 was considered, but luckily the ministry has amended this date to be the July. What is the scope of regulation? Well, let's take a look for a while on the core concepts and assumptions of the incoming changes in the system as a whole. At the core of the envisaged change is a so-called structured invoice. It is a completely new type of the invoice that should replace all other types of paper and digital electronic invoices in Poland. And the KseF itself is a system designed by the Ministry of Finance to be a kind of a central hub for sending, processing, verifying, and archiving and delivering to the structured invoices. It will also act as a central point connecting business entities, sellers and issuers of the invoices, and buyers and receivers of invoices, and revenue administration authorities. All structured invoices will be issued according to a single unified pattern based on a XSD logical schema prepared by the Ministry of Finance. The present version of the schema, FA1, will be replaced by a new FA2 variant soon. It is currently under development of the ministry. The schema, the final version of the schema, will include over 400 fields to fill in, but we'll discuss it a bit later. Under new provisions, all the invoices will be issued in a unified XML format, not easy to read without special software, but perfectly legible for commercial, financial, and invoicing programs. Regarding the IT environment, the taxpayers will be able to issue structured invoices in their commercial, finance, and accounting software and send them to KseF via Application Programming Interface, or API. One of the major assumptions of the new system is that archiving invoices will no longer be a duty of taxpayers. The system will do it for them, and it will keep the invoices for the statutory term of 10 years. Furthermore, the users will not be obliged to verify invoices' origin, contents, and readability, because KseF, the system, will perform necessary checks itself. What is the subjective scope of the new regulation? Well, from July 2024, KseF will become an obligatory tool for all VAT-registered taxpayers, some businesses in Poland, who will be obliged to issue, send, and receive e-invoices through the system. However, as with all rules, there are some exceptions. And so there will be no obligation to use KseF and issue structured invoices by taxpayers who neither have registered seat in Poland, nor do they have fixed establishment here. And the second category of businesses excluded from the obligation of using KseF will be taxpayers with no seat in Poland, but having a fixed establishment here, provided that such establishment does not participate or is not involved in the transaction that is subject to taxation and invoicing. The above-mentioned entities will not have an obligation to issue structured invoices, but they will be entitled to do that. And the obligation to issue structured invoices will apply to all B2B and B2G transactions, both in domestic and trans-border transactions. The latter means both intra-community deliveries of goods and services, as well as export of goods and services to third countries. The Ministry of Finance excluded B2C transactions explicitly. It means that businesses will not have to issue structured invoices in sale of goods and services to consumers. Similarly, there will be no obligation to use structured invoices and KseF in several special procedures like OSS, one-stop shop, or import one-stop shop, sale of imported goods of value not exceeding €150. Two last exceptions from the general rule refer to invoices generated by cash registers. However, this exception will apply only until the end of 2024, and to tickets acting as invoices. For example, all tickets you buy at highways in Poland. What will the KseF and structured invoices bring to us from 2024? There will be new functionalities, brand new functionalities for all taxpayers, because KseF is a complex IT platform designed by the Ministry of Finance, and it will be used to first grant, alter, or draw authorizations to access the system and use it. It will enable the users to authenticate and verify all accesses made on their behalf. This system, of course, will serve to issue, send, receive, and store structured invoices. It will mark the invoices with a unique KseF ID number and mark the invoices dedicated for one recipient with a collective identification, as well as it will analyze correctness of data of the invoices. The general scheme of ideal general scheme of KseF is rather simple. The seller issues a structured invoice in their own finance and accounting software integrated with KseF by API. An invoice is sent to KseF. In the next step, the platform performs a technical and formal verification of a structured invoice and analyzes the correctness of the invoice's schema. And subsequently, it allocates the particular ID number. Finally, KseF sends the invoice to the recipient. Upon reception, the system generates UPO, a receipt confirmation, and sends it back to the seller. There are some important practical information that you should be aware of. Let us repeat once more that July 2024 is the starting date of an obligation to use KseF and to issue structured invoices. This is a general rule, but of course, as always, there are some exceptions. The obligation doesn't apply to transactions in which place of performance, delivery of goods or services is abroad. Besides, there is no obligation to send and deliver the invoice through KseF in an event the recipient does not have a seat or a fixed establishment in Poland. Well, it is understandable as recipients as being foreign entities with no connections to Poland in terms of a seat or a fixed establishment will not have access to the system. Well, in both cases mentioned earlier, the invoices should be issued through KseF, but can be made accessible to the recipients in other form or in different manner. So you should issue your invoice via KseF, but then you should send the recipient the view of the invoice, or let's say print screen of the invoice, or the printout of the invoice via a mail or registered post. Regarding the invoice reception date, it should be said that the invoice is deemed to be received by the recipient on a date when the ID number is allocated and the invoice is made available to the recipient. And similarly, there is a very important difference between issuance date of structured invoice versus the normal, let's say, contemporary invoice. The invoice issuance date should be understood as a date of sending the invoice to KseF. So it doesn't matter when you filled in the logical schema or the form provided to you by the accounting software. What matters is the date when you click send and send it to KseF, to the system. And according to provisions of the VAT Act and subsequent regulations, all structured invoices, or rather their printouts or views or print screens, will contain a QR code. This will be used to enable the recipient to identify a particular invoice as being originated in KseF and originated by a particular seller. There's a question. Is the implementation of KseF includes sending invoices to vendors via the system? Yes. Well, as we said, the system will be obligatory from July 2024. So, if your vendor is a business entity or a government institution, the invoices should be sent by KseF. There will be no other option. Is there any information whether the commercial finance and accounting software and API will be free of use for the taxpayers? Well, I will talk about technical issues a bit later, but now I can say that the Ministry of Finance has provided the taxpayers with a free of charge web application. However, it is advisable to use your commercial finance and accounting software that you use at present, but just make sure that you have the version which contains the API interface and it is already connected or configured to cooperate with KseF, with National System of e-Invoices. Yes, and let us take a moment to talk about technical problems, possible technical problems that you may encounter in using KseF. Troubleshooting. Well, KseF, as any other IT environment, may be prone to a sort of technical problems or breakdowns. It will, of course, need periodical updates, technical breaks, and maintenance. So, what to do in such situations? In case of a system breakdown, duly notified by the ministry on their website, the taxpayer will be obliged to issue an electronic invoice in their own financial and accounting software. And subsequently, after the breakdown is over, within 7 days, they will be obliged to send the invoice to KseF, to the system. If the system is unavailable for any other reasons than a breakdown, the procedure should be the same. The taxpayers generate an electronic invoice and sends it subsequently to KseF. But in such a case, the deadline is a bit shorter. It's 1 day instead of 7. In both situations, the electronic invoices should be generated in line with logical schema of a structured invoice. This will allow the subsequent exporting them to KseF with no further technical problems. And in both cases, the electronic invoice will be deemed duly issued when sent to the system, according to what we said before, a minute before. But sometimes there may be system breakdowns that are sudden and critical and impossible to be notified by the ministry. I call them crisis situations. In such situations, the invoices should be issued as ordinary electronic invoices or even paper invoices. So, in case of crisis situations or critical breakdowns of the system, the Ministry of Finance allows the taxpayers to issue invoices as they were used to before implementation of KseF. Therefore, there will be no obligation to send those invoices to the system afterwards. The obligation to use KseF implies, of course, also the sanctions for infringing the relevant provisions of the VAT Act. And so the taxpayer will be subject to a financial penalty if they, in three situations. The first situation is when they don't issue structured invoices despite the statutory obligation. The second, if they issue an invoice incompatible with the logical schema during the system breakdown. Or the third, when they fail to export the invoices to the system upon system restoration after the breakdown. And the financial penalty is automatically imposed on the taxpayer by the relevant head of the Tax and Revenue Office, and amounts to 100% of the tax indicated in the invoice. In the event there is no tax indicated in the invoice, the penalty will amount to 18.7% of the total amount of the invoice. But in any case, the penalty will not be lower than 1,000 zloty for the first infringement we talked about, and 500 zloty in case of a second and third infringement. So in case of the infringements related to system breakdowns and the troubleshooting procedures. Right. So let us now focus on more practical side of new provisions of VAT Act. In order to use KseF as a system, you must, of course, obtain access, proper access to KseF. The methods of acquiring access differ from in relation to different classes of business entities, individual businesses, and all others. The individual business may obtain access to KseF via a PUAP platform. Authorization will be able by trusted signature. It is a tool available through this platform, or by a qualified electronic signature, QES. All other entities, either partnerships or companies, should secure their access to the system either with a qualified electronic seal containing the NIP, so tax ID number, or with a special application form called ZAWFA. The companies who own the qualified electronic seal will not need to submit the ZAWFA form, but they will be able to directly create their corporate account in the taxpayer's application and begin using KseF. The taxpayers will be able to use the taxpayers application to grant and withdraw authorizations to use the system, as well as to manage the authorizations granted. And the authentication of access to KseF is subject to verification with help of indicated means. So qualified electronic seal, QES, trusted signature available for natural persons, and a token. It's a special authorization tool, a special authorization code generated by KseF. And authorizations, each taxpayer may indicate one or more persons to perform all relevant actions in KseF. Any such person should be able to every person that will have access and will be able to issue or receive invoices should be duly authorized by the taxpayer. And this will be possible through your own commercial, financial, and accounting software connected to KseF via API interface, or through a KseF web application. There will be also a possibility to file a ZAWFA form again, indicating a particular person who is authorized to use KseF on your behalf. It is, however, important to remember that the taxpayer will be able to authorize more than one person to access and operate its KseF account. And the scope of their authorizations may vary or even overlap. An authorized person will not have an obligation to create their own account in the system, as they will use the entity's, the organization's account or profile. The logical schema. The core of the new system is a structured invoice. And as its name suggests, it should be based on some sort of structure. And this structure is based on a logical schema designed by the Ministry of Finance. As we said earlier, the current version, FA1, will be replaced soon by a new schema, FA2, which is believed to be the final and target version of the schema. In order to issue a structured invoice, you will have to fill in a robust form with over 400 fields available. Well, of course, not all of them are obligatory, and we'll discuss it in a minute. And the reason for this idea is to make all invoices accessible by all financial and accounting software available on the market, and to warrant that all invoices have the same structure and the same contents. The structure of invoices consists of elements and fields, and the invoice itself will be saved as a XML format file. This is a format used for intra-system communication and is readable by majority, if not all, available accounting softwares. XML file is not easily readable for a human, as it consists of dozens of command lines. Well, it may be opened by the notebook application. However, it is advisable to open it through your accounting and invoicing softwares. And as we said before, the logical schema consists of certain elements and fields. Both elements and fields fall into one of three categories: obligatory, contingent, and optional. Obligatory elements and fields must be filled in as they contain crucial data and information required by law. Contingent fields must be filled in only in cases when statutory provisions require to do so. And in case of optional elements or fields, the taxpayer has a total freedom to decide whether to fill them or not. Please note that in order to determine the character of a particular field or cell, you should take into account the context in which it is placed. There will be some places in the schema when the element itself is contingent or optional. However, if you decide to fill in this element, you may encounter some fields that are indeed obligatory. For example, there is a contingent element titled terminy płatności or payment terms, which, according to what we've already said, doesn't have to be filled in. However, if you decide to fill in this payment terms element, terminy płatności, you will encounter a field termin płatności, payment term, which is obligatory field and must be filled in this situation. The structure of the e-invoice is divided into 7 main sections. I will just scan through it because we may spend 1 hour discussing the particular components of the e-invoice, but it's not the point of this meeting. So the 7 sections. Nagłówek, header. It is a obligatory element and contains data on the date and time of generating of the invoice, as well as the version and name of the IT system used to generate the invoice. Podmiot pierwszy, entity 1, an obligatory element which contains information identifying the seller. Podmiot drugi, entity 2, also obligatory element, and in turn it contains information of the purchaser. Podmiot trzeci, entity 3, it is an optional element, and it regards the third-party entity other than a seller or purchaser, such as, for example, payer or receiver of goods or other intermediaries in the transaction. And podmiot upoważniony, entitled entity. It is a contingent element which contains information identifying the entity referred to in the invoice, such as a bailiff, enforcement proceeding authority, or a tax representative. The main or the core part of in fact, the biggest part of the structured invoice will be FA, the 6th element. It is an obligatory element and contains all information on the transaction, its subject, its any settlements, payments, terms of deliveries, all means of transport used, etc. And finally, the footer or stopka, which is completely optional, which contains any remaining data, such as court registered number, KRS, numer KRS, REGON statistical number, addresses, business addresses, offices, opening hours of your entity or organization, and so on. So all information that are not that relevant to the transaction itself, but they have some business importance, business meaning to you. It is crucial to remember that all obligatory fields must be filled in. Otherwise, the system, KseF, will not accept the invoice. Please remember that together with all contingent and optional fields, the structured invoice may contain much more information than required by provision of the VAT Act. However, the obligatory part of the invoice reflects 100% the obligatory provisions of VAT Act. And presence of contingent and optional fields is a result of a business practice, at least so claims the Ministry of Finance. They are said to have been introduced upon the ministry's consultations with businesses in Poland. As I've already mentioned, decision to fill in certain optional or contingent elements may lead to an obligation to fill in certain obligatory fields. We must underline this, and you must remember, because some problems with KseF may occur if you miss any obligatory field. The invoice will be treated as duly used only if all obligatory fields have been filled in, and the KseF verifies the invoice from the formal and technical point of view. So it only checks the correctness and completeness of the form, and it doesn't assess any substantive contents of the invoice. Therefore, the system doesn't verify the invoice for any substantial errors or calculation mistakes. When talking about errors, let's have a look on it a bit closer. In the event the business or the organization exports a faulty invoice, i.e. incorrectly filled or incomplete, such document will be rejected by the system, and such document will be not considered as a valid invoice and will not have any effects. A rejected invoice, well, as a virtually non-existent document, cannot be cancelled or corrected by the issuer. Basically speaking, KseF will reject an invoice in two cases. First, as we said, due to incompatibility of the invoice file with the logical schema, or the second situation, due to operations by an unauthorized person. So, if a person who is not authorized by you to use KseF issues an invoice, it will be rejected by the system. Please note that incorrect identifying data of purchaser, like a business name or NIP number, are not considered by KseF as errors, which would disqualify the invoice itself. Such document will be accepted by the system and sent to an entity indicated there, of course, after having been allocated the ID number. Well, this may generate some substantive problems. So, what to do with such situations? Well, the only logical solution I may have is to correct such invoice to a zero amount and to issue a separate invoice with correct ID data of the purchaser. And of course, there's no possibility to correct an invoice in order to rectify faulty ID data. So this solution I propose seems to be the only and the most logical one to correct the faulty invoice to zero amount and to issue the separate invoice with the correct data. Well, I've provided you with a short table summing up the most important differences between a structured invoice and ordinary electronic invoice as it was defined in the VAT Act previously. So I think we'll just skip this elements, as all the differences have already been discussed by me, and it seems quite straightforward. The unique format versus any format available, unique system and to use versus various commercial invoicing systems. And the most important question of today's meeting is how to prepare for KseF implementation. Well, it goes without saying that KseF implementation is a major challenge awaiting the businesses in the coming months. It is indeed quite a complex process, which should be started as soon as possible. We talked about this at the beginning of our meeting. Well, the most logical approach that we would recommend would be to divide the whole process into certain phases and to prepare the implementation plan, which should be followed in step-by-step manner. And our suggestion is to divide the whole process into 4 phases. The first, preparation of your organization and IT system. The second, establishing automatic communications with KseF. Third, authorization in KseF in the system. And the fourth, implementation and automation of cooperation processes with the system. Well, preparing the entity is the first phase you will have to focus. First of all, you should make sure that all your internal regulations and procedures for sale and purchase and for invoicing processes, including all relevant internal documentation, are consistent with new requirements. It is advisable to perform a special audit of all your processes and documentation. And the audit should result in the identification of certain documents or rules that should be altered or amended in order to remain in line with the VAT Act provisions. However, if you lack such documents or regulations, it is strongly recommended that you introduce such documents as soon as possible. Well, of course, such documents in some part will repeat to some degree, of course, the provisions of the VAT Act, but it should be such procedures should be tailored to your organization's needs, structure, and internal rules. It should also provide the entity's management and employees, both present or future employees, with trustworthy and reliable source of knowledge of applicable procedures and maybe some troubleshooting solutions for cooperation with the KseF system. Well, it goes without saying that also the IT system should be appropriately updated. The entity should either update the existing finance and accounting software in order to make it compatible with KseF, or select a new system which will meet all the requirements. Well, this may be a good occasion to use the implementation of KseF as an opportunity to modernize the IT environment and think, for example, about digitalization of your entity and processes and all documents that are circulating through your organization. Well, it is also advisable to perform a practical training regarding the system and the structured invoices, which will provide the entity and its personnel with knowledge on their functionalities, new procedures, methods of filling in the logical schema, and so on. The phase of automatic communication and authorization may somehow overlap with the previous step we discussed a moment before, and should focus on the technical issues. We've just talked about choosing the right IT environment and performing a selection process for your new or updated IT system. You should consider the following issues. First, a degree of integration with KseF. So whether the system or the software has the API interface which cooperates with the KseF already. Second, the speed of application of a software and importing all accounting and sale procedures. Third, you should consider whether the software provider offers any practical training for the new software. Number four, you should pay attention to available technical assistance, troubleshooting, and availability of updates, their speed, and their effectiveness. You should also pay attention to degree of automation of the processes offered by particular software, and the ability to generate the print screens of the e-invoices for purposes of cooperating with foreign entities which do not have access to the system, to KseF. And last but not least, you should pay close attention to the data safety and virus and malware protection offered by a particular software you're looking for. Well, as I've already mentioned, it is advisable to consider whether such software should either cover only sales and invoicing, or cover also some warehousing processes, filing and receiving orders, and performing the sales, or maybe should it enable the total digitalization of your organization, digitalization of documents and the process in your entity. It will be also necessary to secure certain means of access and authorization, such as qualified electronic signature, qualified electronic seal, because without that, as we discussed before, you will not be able to use the functionalities of KseF. I advise that even before July 2024, you should complete all the processes, and you train all your personnel, and you grant authorizations to all the persons indicated to use the system. And prior to July 2024, as I said before, it is strongly recommended that KseF has already been tested in practice. It will allow you to verify the level of your knowledge and information of the new system, and knowledge of the rules and procedures applicable to sales and invoicing procedures. You will also it will also be good to train to fill in the logical schema before the deadline, before the July 2024, just to be ready and not to be prone to mistakes. Such practical testing should cover, as I said, issuing real structured invoices with cooperation, of course, with your business partners, because prior to July 2024, recipients should grant a consent to receive structured invoices via KseF. After July 2024, issuing the structured invoices will not be dependent on the receiver's consent. there are several potential problems that may occur in your cooperation with KseF. The first of all, of course, is a new logical schema itself. It contains over 400 fields to fill in. So the schema, the form to fill in itself may be problematic at first. It is quite complex for a start, especially for persons used to rather simple forms offered by the present financial and accounting software. And new procedures for correcting the invoices may at first occur problematic. This procedure is quite complex and consists of several steps. Receiver who downloads an invoice containing certain errors drafts a correction proposal and exports it to KseF. KseF then allocates it with a certain ID number. Then KseF exports the proposal to the issuer. The issuer generates the correction invoice and exports it back to KseF. And KseF, in turn, allocates the ID number for the correcting invoice and sends it to the receiver. The ministry warrants that regarding the data safety, that the KseF has undergone a complex security audit performed by an independent third party. Well, however, some questions on data security may be raised, but the ministry informs that data and communications through the system are encrypted with use of additional encrypting mechanisms based on the symmetrical and asymmetrical keys. And of course, the access to the system may not be possible without appropriate authentication. Before I spare a minute to say how can we help you with the process, let me scan through your questions. I'll try to answer one more because we're out of time at the moment. Is a need to obligatory register invoices from not Polish vendors in KseF after July 2024? Well, if a Polish vendor, if a not Polish vendor does, if by a non-Polish vendor we understand a foreign entity without the registered seat in Poland and without a fixed establishment here in our country, then it will not be obligatory. Such entity will not have to use KseF to issue invoices. However, if such entity has either a registered seat or any fixed establishment here, for example, division, branch, or the country office, it should be obliged to use KseF and issue structured invoices. So how can we help you? I will briefly talk how can we support you in the area of preparing for KseF implementation. First of all, we are able to assist your businesses in performing an audit of internal documentation regarding sales and invoicing procedures, concluded with a special report in which we will indicate any documents or procedures that should be altered or amended in order to be in line with new VAT Act provisions. We will draft all necessary documents and regulations or procedures, or appropriately alter or amend the existing documents to make sure that you are in line with the new requirements and you're ready for implementation of KseF. We'll be happy also to organize special training sessions for you, for management of your organizations and for your employees, in which we will address such topics as presentation of the KseF as a system and the problem of structured invoice. We will analyze the potentially problematic issues in practical application and try to address those problems and do a troubleshooting brainstorm session with you. And we can walk you through a step-by-step analysis of a FA2 logical schema, which, as we said, can be quite complex and difficult at the first glance. Our law firm can also advise you as to the choice of the relevant IT environment and accounting and financial software, which will be compatible with the KseF requirements, and that will allow you to be in line with other requirements such as data protection, personal data protection, protection of your corporate secrets, etc. So we will be happy to walk you through this quite complex and difficult process. And as we said, it is better to start as soon as possible because, well, July 2024 is over 1 year from now, but the scope of your obligations, the scope of actions you should take to be in line with the new requirements is quite big. So I would like to thank you very much for participating in our webinar and for all your questions. I'm sorry that I was unable to answer all of them, but as previously announced, I will address them individually via email correspondence. Of course, we will provide you also with a recording of today's event. And I encourage you to contact us if you have any questions regarding KseF as a system, structured invoices, or any problems regarding implementation of this system. Thank you once again. I hope it was helpful for you. I hope to meet you again soon, and have a nice afternoon. Goodbye.